meetup and has a theme of unleashing the power of AI and human augmentation for a smarter future. The speakers for this session include Chu-Cheng Shea, Chen-Ping Yu, and Wei-Cheng Wang, with Nina as the moderator. And Nina is the co-founder of Taiwan Data Science Meetup. And I will now let Nina take over. So once again, thank you to all our distinguished and wonderful guests for joining us today. Please stay tuned for... Sorry about that. And so stay tuned for the exciting forums and programs scheduled throughout the day. Thank you.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Cool. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here on a Saturday. It's not like you're missing out because it's overcast outside. And today's gonna be very informative, very valuable. And then there's a lot of forums that we're going to go through today. And then don't forget to go to networking, career expos, and then a lot of vendors out there. So take your time, enjoy today. And so today, welcome to our first panel discussion, our forum, AI and Data Science Forum. Our topic today is AI and human augmentation. I'm your host, Nina Chen. I am co-founder of Data Science Associations and then Taiwanese Data Science Meetup with 32,000 members on Facebook group, along with my co-founder, Qi Yiguan. And then it's an organization that's dedicated in connecting and cultivating DS talents amongst the Taiwanese community. So if you're not part of it, definitely make sure to join. And today, it's my pleasure to be on the stage with these three seasoned AI DS practitioners. And then with me, we have Chu-Cheng Shea. He's Chief Technology Officer at Xing US. And we have Chen-Ping Yu, Engineering Manager at Google. And then we also have Wei-Cheng Wang, Chief Marketing Officer and GM at Cadence Mobile. So today we're going to talk about AI. And artificial intelligence has been a really hot topic today or this year. And I'm pretty sure people in the audience, you probably have used and played ChatGPT, and maybe asking questions such as, what is the meaning of life? Or giving it prompts to things like, write me an opening for a panel discussions I'm hosting. Today we're honored to have these practitioners on stage where we'll talk about how AI has brought really brought convenience to our life and also created opportunities in various different business sectors. And we'll also talk about what are some of the concerns or risks that keep them up at night, as well as give advice to people who are wishing to pursue a career in AI. So without further ado, I know I've been talking a lot. I'm going to pass the microphone over. Can you all tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do and how is it related to AI?
I will start. I'm Chu-Cheng Shea, and I'm glad to be here again. See many familiar faces from last year. I think I'm doing an okay job, so you have me come back again. So I hope I can come back again next year. I'm currently working for Shein, e-commerce platform for fashion in US as their Chief Technology Officer. And before this job, I was working for Etsy, also an e-commerce company. I spent all my career doing e-commerce and start as an engineer, scientist, manager, all the way to executive. So I've been spending all my life with AI and technology, and I'm happy to be here and chat more about all the topics we prepare for today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chen-Ping. Really happy to be here. My background is primarily in computer vision, machine learning research. I became an entrepreneur about six years ago. I was the founder of Fire, an AI-powered AR navigation software company over 6 years, and now I'm at Google. Really excited to share some experience with everyone.
Well, good morning, San Francisco. I came all the way from Southern California. My name is Wei-Cheng Wang. Thank you very much, Nina, for your kind introduction. I do possess a somewhat different background because I'm an academically trained economist. And as Nina said, that I am the co-founder and currently carrying the title of Chief Marketing Officer at KDM Mobile Software. Very glad to be here. Now, with respect to artificial intelligence and data science, I think we all know that the change is coming. But I wanted to say that I bring maybe a somewhat different perspective to the table because I wanted to focus a little bit more on the commercial applications rather than talking about like hardcore engineering stuff, because obviously that's not my background. But I think that we're gonna have. I will have an opportunity to learn a lot, from this particular panel as well as from the networking opportunities with all of you, and I look forward to that.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us today. So our first question for today is, so AI applications and programs has been around or has been seeing huge growth in recent years. But actually the research and development has been going on for many, many decades. So I'm also curious, what do you see have been the most breakthrough or advancement in the past decades? And what do you think, how have they shaped our life or the industry? Anyone would want to go first?
I can try my best to talk my perspective. I think one thing which happened recently, as all of you know, is the I would say development of generative AI. No matter like in natural language processing, like ChatGPT, we see how people has noticed that the machine is able to comprehend most natural language, and also like those diffusion technology. To some extent, they are all based on this generative technology that we basically have a way to train machine. If you think about maybe a couple years ago, a lot of really cool AI application is based on supervised learning. Basically, you have the human to label and kind of teach machine to mimic those labels and then trying to increase your precision and recall. But these days, the training has been a little different, is that with different mindset, you hide certain words on language and then have the AI to try to guess the next words so they can kind of mimic the human conversation. I think all those things has been changing the way how people perceive AI. And thanks to those like a new application, I think now the attention and investment on AI has been far faster than I would say a couple years ago, with also the GPU to help the computation. We have started seeing a lot of, I would say, magic moment. So it is possible, in my opinion, that we happen to be on the edge that probably AI is just like 20 years ago when internet was invented. And at this moment, probably we are on another internet. We just don't know yet.
Nina, I'm sorry I have to ask. Can you repeat the question again?
So what are some of the breakthrough advancements you've seen that, and how have they shaped our lives or business?
Right. So on the more historic and technical side, I think what really made AI what it is today started with 2 or 3 major things. One is the beginning of deep learning back in 2012. That started with a paper, I think it was called ImageNet Classification with Deep Convolutional Neural Networks. And that word deep is what really coined to deep learning. And several authors on that paper, really, really important. The first person is Alex Krzyzewski. His name became the name of AlexNet, the network that paper created, which is the foundation network for most deep learning networks ever since. And the first GPU implementation of deep neural network, which now everything uses the GPU. The second author on that paper is also very interesting. His name is Ilya Sutskever, I believe. He is the co-founder and chief scientist at OpenAI. So recently there's a news about how I think Elon Musk poached him from Google, and that Larry Page was really unhappy about that. And I think that's the guy. And the third person, Jeffrey Hinton, is a godfather in the AI area. So that paper was defining. And then the Transformer paper that happened, I think 2017, that came out of Google. And why is that really important? Because that is the backbone of what GPT is. ChatGPT, as we all know, GPT actually stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And that's because of the transformer architecture, which allowed long-term dependency to be to be kind of solved in a language model. And then we have now ChatGPT. So all these are kind of breakthroughs that happened during the history of the development. I think those are really important.
Actually, quick question. Can you repeat what does GPT stand for?
Yes.
I don't know.
GPT, all important, all the keywords now are all the buzzwords. The first G is generative, generative AI, generative. P as a pre-trained, and then T is transformer.
Okay, thank you. Quick round of applause. Who knows GPT stand for? Raise your hand. Okay, decent amount, some amount, okay. Yeah, so now you'll learn something, first learning of the day. Keep making notes. Thank you.
Yeah, well, so like I said, I mean, I have a somewhat layman's perspective, right? Because I want to talk about perspectives from a random average Joe that you would bump in the street, like me myself, right? So I think AI is very new, although it's not something that's brand new. I think we all have, people sitting on this stage or in the audience have all had their fair share of experiences interacting with robots on the phone, right? We all want to get to that customer representative, but there will be a voice that try to guide you through and try to categorize what your questions might be, right? And then it wasn't until maybe, like you said, 2012, deep learning was introduced, and then there were more applications that were being developed, right? The other day I was playing on my iPhone, trying to look for the pictures of my son, and I click on the kind of like the portrait of my son, and my younger son popped up, and then my image also popped up, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we're from the same factory, I guess. So I think I guess the deep learning really helped, proliferate the applications that we're currently using. I think the deep breakthrough for people like you and I is really the ChatGPT, because you now have an understanding, knowing that there are limitless possibilities created by the machines that allows you and enables you to really interact to accomplish things that you previously wouldn't imagine that you could accomplish.
Yeah, and I can tell that you're really excited we're all pretty excited for this technology. And then there's actually some concerning thoughts, or on the flip side, we're going to talk about in just a bit. But before we get into there, I'm also curious, so we talked about some of the impact to our daily lives, but what about some of the like examples that you've seen that has been commercially successful, maybe in your respective areas, like retail, e-commerce, VR, self-driving, or B2B and project management part?
So I'll try to take that on first. As the theme suggests, that we're talking about artificial intelligence and human augmentation, right? So from my perspective, I supervise a team, oversee a team, and I always tell the team, you make sure that you leverage the existing tools out there to save your time, right? Because we want to save our precious time to do the things that could create the most value, right? And I think, from my perspective, is the document services, the support services, or the services that AI could help us, really eliminate the mundane type of work and really to give the time back to us, right? There are companies and applications out there that try to take that on and has been very successful, right? There's a company called Flexport, right? So for example, it's a stevedoring company, basically managing logistics. We actually have a startup company in Taiwan that does similar things, like Go Freight. I'm not sure whether you've heard Go Freight or not. I think Go Freight might be also a Taiwanese portfolio company. What they do is they make sure that there's no, maintain the highest level of efficiency, making sure that logistics of the vessels are being managed properly. And previously, it's very difficult to do because people have to deal with the differences in time zones when you're shipping goods from different continents, and then after the cargo arrives, you have to make arrangements for ground transportation, and all this takes a lot of time. And sometimes there is a huge amount of efficiency loss. Right? Support services, like the customer support example that I gave you, all those things are what AI could augment. What us humans do. And I think really that's the valuable part. Obviously, there are more advanced challenges that AI could help us solve. But I think, from the commercial perspective, that's what most people are looking for.
Thank you.
I would answer the question in two perspectives. One is for all of you and myself. I think if you start to in a lot of company, like a communication tool today, they start to have this built-in translation. So no matter you work with people in Brazil, you work with people speaking in Japanese, then you will be able to start to communicate with your native language. I think this changed the way how company work, especially international company. Think about you have this kind of WeChat or Line, and they can auto translate the language. I think this changed entirely how we communicate and work together. And I think beyond that, even for individual, I think the way I learned in the past is through school, and then through online course. But say when I want to learn corporate finance a few months ago, I actually relied a lot on using these kind of GPT tools. I mean, sometimes they give me a wrong answer, but most of the time they help me to debug or answer a very stupid question like what is free cash flow, and I just don't know that. And in the past, I probably rely on Google, and it may take me a couple minutes, now just a second. So I think the way as an individual I find it changed the life is the speed of learning can be 10x if you see this as a powerful learning tool. Of course, it's not very reliable, but if you use it wisely, it will change and create advantage for yourself. And on commercial or retail or e-commerce perspective is, I think deep learning itself is a much powerful model than a lot of traditional supervised learning. So we started seeing a lot of recommendation or search ranking, and also this technology to embrace the technology like deep learning. Fundamentally, they probably still try to solve this as a supervised learning problem, but as we start to introduce more, I think recently, the top in conference is always multi-model, which means when you search something, you take care of the image, you take care of the natural language, you take care of all kinds of different sources, and you see the problem as a holistic view instead of just a very simple keyword search matchings. I think those things will change the way and also the experience people interact with the e-commerce site.
AI, I think there's a lot of application, especially revolutionized or enabled things like self-driving a couple of years ago. I want to say it's a couple of years ago because it used to be very, very popular. And then until all the companies kind of went out of business a couple of years ago. I think what's left right now is Cruise and Waymo.
Waymo, yes, they're
yeah.
everywhere in San Francisco.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad that there's still some of them around. But if it wasn't because of AI, there wouldn't have even been a boom of self-driving. You have to be able to recognize the road, the lanes, where the car should drive to, how to avoid obstacles, and all in real time, and at a very high accuracy. So that's computer vision AI at its finest. But sadly, yeah, it's now it's kind of old tech because now the new thing is generative AI, and that's okay. There's also a lot of AI is also really useful for VR AR. Oculus, even though you use the stick controller, but they also do allow you to use your hand gesture to kind of move and interact with VR elements. And that's using computer vision, again, in real time. And it has to be in a very, very low latency, so you don't really, you don't even realize that it's detecting your hand, and you feel that it's almost instantaneous. And that's the same for the Vision Pro headset that Apple kind of unveiled a couple months ago, that they were showing the different gesture-controlled applications, right? So that's also very important. And scanning a room to be able to actually place AR elements in front of you or on the tabletop. These are all computer vision AI. So these are also really the AI that's working underneath the hood, but enabling these important areas.
Yeah, and it sounds like what we've talked about are a lot of the AI that's based on kind of the supervised learnings, and we're just kind of on the cusp of seeing how general AI is being adopted in the industry or being an opportunity to be addressed by AI in our daily lives. And when we talked about AI, I think people a lot of time think of Andrew Ng. And in his recent research, or that he stated that a lot of these value capture opportunities are lies in the daily life or the use cases where AI can address as a general technology, and then that in return can also fuel the development of the infrastructure or the hardware layers. So I'm also curious in terms of the market slash application layers, which is the things that we use or in business use. Where do you see are the next biggest opportunity for generative AI to be addressed, which can also continue to be adopted and advance the AI kind of advancement?
I think that the opportunity definitely exists in the data ownership, data transactions, because it doesn't matter what application that you want to develop, but what technology you want to develop, you need the foundation of data, right? And obviously, I can understand where Andrew Ng comes from. He obviously wants to sell more chips, so he's gonna be super hyped on AI. But I argue there might be two focuses going forward. Number one is the data ownership and the transactions related to data, because that's going to drive the algorithm, that's going to drive the input and the quality of output, right? And the second one might be commercialization, right? So the AR, VR opportunities seem very cool. So happy to report that, I've driven cars that with the VR, with the what is that called? The dashboard display on display or something like that. That gives me the speed limit as well as the direction of GPS.
The heads-up displays.
Yeah, heads-up display, correct. So the heads-up display is an add-on, right? It doesn't affect the main functionality of the car, but it asks users to actually pay a little extra to get that functionality, although cool, but it doesn't affect the main functionality. So I'm waiting to see whether or not AI could help create and promote products and services that we must have instead of being just an ancillary service. So it goes back to the commercialization. Like, how do we develop applications that are so, I want to say, prevalent or universal that we cannot avoid? And then when developing those commercialized opportunities, can we also identify the opportunities in the foundation, right? And there are obviously players in the industry, and I argue, like, for example, the finance industry, the healthcare industry, or the software industry, not only they have recurring transactional data, they have user behavior data. So they're basically sitting on the gold mine, right? There might be other industries that share very similar characteristics, but I think the fact that they have access to data would potentially enable them to participate in data transactions, or maybe allow them to develop AI related applications that could be later commercialized. So those are, I think, personally, where the opportunities are.
Other than my day job, I'm also an angel investor and also work with a lot of VC. And so I'm have that fortunate to see a lot of creativity idea. I would say that actually the idea or the biggest opportunity is, in the past, you need a huge capital, like raising money to start a company. But these days, I have been seeing many people that they are able to bootstrap from just a very simple idea, but the building all solution on top of this AI. So just give example, like say, you don't really need a customer support, right? You can transfer like a robot that handle most of daily kind of customer inquiry, like say, where's my shipping? How long I can get my item? I think all those things these days, generative AI can take perfectly. And even like things like you can have the AI to write email to your customer to say, hey, congratulations. I heard that you recently get a promotion. Do you want us to buy some like a gift for your friends? Like all these things has been impossible in the past. They require a business, require human capital, require hiring software engineer to build a solution. But now you don't have to. You just need to find the right API and then figure out a way to connect all those API. So I think the opportunity lays on with this new capability that open a lot of automation, and also magic, these kind of powers. How you connect your idea and build on top of those skill you can acquire easily.
Well, side note, personally, I think we still need a person customer service, ultimately for that angry person who just can't get through their phone.
Are
or
you
can't
that angry
open-
person?
Yes, yes. I was trying to connect to some customer service yesterday and be like waiting on the phone for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And people working with like mobile services probably wait even longer. But anyway, side notes. Ping, anything?
I also think there's a lot of opportunity on the applications of generative AI side, but then we're eating into the generative AI section too much, which is a later section. So I'm gonna kind of come back to AR VR.
Who cares about them?
I didn't say that. So yeah, I still think AR VR is even though metaverse is kind of a very polarized. People has polarized opinions about metaverse, but it is an opportunity if Meta can really build it well and can build a better hardware and to enable better user experience. And that will allow a lot of AI technologies and applications to enable better interaction, better user experience for the metaverse or Vision Pro for AR. And because there's, again, like I said, there's a lot of AI involved in order for you to feel like there's actual something augmented reality in front of you that feels like part of the real world. And in order for that to happen, there's many parts of AI that has to run in real time at the same time and in a very small form factor using a very small chipset. As we all know, ChatGPT, it takes, these type of models take many GPUs to run, and that's very expensive. But when you have an AR, VR device like a headset, you don't have that many GPUs. In fact, you have like a Qualcomm chip in it, and that has to sustain all the computation. So I think there's a lot of AI opportunities for VR.
Do you think the hurdle is with the computing power and to avoid the latency and to better the user experience?
Both, I think. Qualcomm and the chip makers, they're trying to make more powerful AI-specific accelerator chipsets. But at the same time, a lot of researchers are trying to distill and lessen the size of the neural networks so that they don't require that many GPUs to run. So both are advancing at the same time.
Well, thank you. And as we were talk about a lot of the AI advancement, exciting applications and opportunities, people are oftentimes also start thinking about, it also raises some concerns around how is AI impacting our life and negatively. So things such as privacy infringement, such as intellectual property ownership, and even job security. And that risk could also be impacting a very different demographic or professions compared to the previous industrial revolutions or previous internet, Web 2.0. So I'm also curious, as you're thinking or advancing and doing your work on your job, seeing these AI technology being advancing, what keeps you up at night when thinking about how is AI impacting our lives?
Before I talk about what keeps me up at night, I wanted
Besides
to share,
your kids.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I wanted to kind of share the optimistic economist perspective, right? So the introduction of new technology is not new. In the beginning of the 20th century, when we first introduced the agriculture machine, at the time, the amount of employment that we have in the agriculture sector was probably over 50%. And then right now, if you look at the agriculture sector, we have less than 2% of the labor force working in the agriculture sector, but there's no shortage of food. And we don't have that much unemployment. I mean, last time I checked, the unemployment rate was like 3.7%, right? So, and fast forward to 1970, first, when we introduced ATM machines, all the bank tellers were freaking out, right? My aunt retired in the early 90s because she didn't want to deal with this new thing called email. Right? And I imagine 20 years from now, looking back, we would laugh at the AI thing that we're talking about right now, thinking, oh, this is a common stuff, right? So that's the optimistic economist perspective, letting you know that people are, I think, creative enough, human beings are creative enough that we will always find a way. What keeps me up at night is that I don't think that people understand what it takes for AI to be improved upon or more efficient and effective. In order for AI to understand you more, you have to compromise on the privacy, right? So think about ChatGPT. The reason why ChatGPT could provide you with that much content is simply because there is a machine working behind the scene trying to crawl data, right? And if you own a website, you don't want ChatGPT to crawl through or come through whatever your website has. You could actually block it. Just focus on GPT bot, and you don't let GPT bot. And there are ports that you could actually lock down. But here's the thing: like for people like you and I, sometimes we don't even know that we have given up our privacy. Sometimes that option wasn't made very obvious to us, and for the sake of inconvenience. So how much are we willing to give up in terms of privacy to accomplish the next level convenience is my question, right? And I think that is a topic ultra sensitive in the United States, right? In Asia, not so much. Like people are currently developing AI applications without thinking about how important it is the notion of privacy, right? So, and I think that's also a cultural difference.
Yeah, I'm sensing a little bit argument or debate between the collectivism versus individualism, like how much you're willing to give to get benefited in your daily life.
I'm really worried about AI taking over the world. I'm just gonna say it. And that's also a polarized topic between some big names.
Right.
I think Elon Musk and somebody else, they take opposite opinions. And as a former researcher in AI, I was working on computer vision, and I remember a couple of years ago when this discussion was really, really hot. And that was before ChatGPT, and I was thinking, well, we're still trying to figure out where the lanes are, where the roads are, and trying to get 70% accuracy in detecting objects. We're so far from AI being dangerous to us or even being conscious. That's just, we don't need to worry about that. And then ChatGPT happened. That totally blew my mind. I never really thought about we can actually mimic consciousness, mimic logic and reasoning through learning through a language model that learns from a bunch of texts. It's so good at regurgitating what it's learned, but it mimics consciousness, and that really changed. It changed everything. And last year, I remember there was a paper from Facebook. I think it was called API something. So that basically what that neural network does was it's able to find, if you ask the network to do something for you, say to book a hotel for you, it will go find the proper API to make that API call to initiate this action for you. So what that means is it was not only able to answer your questions, it was able to find ways to execute on your based on your request. And that's very dangerous, because if AI is able to execute and find ways to execute on the request, if there is an API that leads to another API that leads to another API, eventually goes to a nuclear launch sequence, you can do it. And I would definitely imagine bad people trying to use that technology for such purpose. So, and unfortunately, a lot of times, what researchers care about is less about what people would use it for. It's more about, oh, I'm enabling a new breakthrough, I'm enabling a new technology, or I'm publishing this paper at Science, Nature, CVPR, I'm getting this many citations. It's really important for them to help us with the breakthrough, but at the same time, these breakthroughs are also very dangerous, and I don't see ways to prevent that, because it's just impossible for us to stop the progress. But at the same time, this progress is very concerning to me.
But do you think is there any guardrails that can be put in place by various different players in the ecosystem, government or private sectors or nonprofit? Thoughts?
I think that's in the works, but it really takes a lot of collaborations to really figure something out to be able to guardrail against these potential risks, or not potential, I think very real risks.
Yeah.
I also worry about introducing too much regulatory influence into the things that we're developing at the same time, because there are people, including me myself, don't trust the government, right? So how far do you? Every time when we have some issues and concerns, we want to enlist government's help. Every time when the government wants our tax money, we said leave us alone, right? So unfortunately, you can't pick and choose. If you want the government to come in, most likely they will come in and take over. So there is no like borderline or gray zone in their perspective. I mean, obviously from the recent conversations and discussions that are currently in the public domain, they want to take over. They want to have regulatory oversight in everything we do. And what keeps you at night really sends chills in my spine as well. I totally get it. But I argue, I think there is some sort of self-consciousness involved in this. Like researchers, they need to be trained in a more well-rounded manner. So they need to understand that there is supposed to be a humanistic perspective in this, trying to gatekeep the safety of human beings. But like you said, I mean, the researchers are being driven by impact factor and the amount of publication that they have. I mean, all of us sitting up here, we have academic backgrounds and we know how the game is played. We get that. But I don't think that in the entire education system, anywhere in the world, we have that built in. So people are not being trained in a well-rounded manner. They are pursuing whatever they want to pursue because they're driven by motivation and incentives.
I like you mentioned education. Actually, things keep me at night is it's about next generations. Like take example, like when we grew up, all of you include like a memorization is important of taking tests, right? And then we have like you need to be 18 or 20 to drink alcohol, but we don't have age limit to using any technology these days. You can at the school like I mean, is it really good to ban the usage of like a ChatGPT, or we should train our next generation to live and breathe with this technology, right? I think in very old days, people when they are young, they learn how to ride horses even they are like 7 years old, right? Because it's an important skill to ride horses before car was invented. But now when car was invented, I say no, 7 years old is not okay. So waiting until 15 or 18, depending on which country.
Right.
But I think the way we educate our next generation is still 20 years ago. You go to school, you memorize book, you take tests, based on how much you can memorize, how much you can study hard, and then we based on that to decide like your rank and give you and send you to different university. I think there are a lot of university in America already started reading this like a SAT score. They want something else. So I think similarly like what's our like a position, like how we teach our kids, right? Should I encourage him to using ChatGPT and tell him anything available is at your disposal? Just learn how to build I just want the results. Or we should tell them, no, put a guardrail, like this too early for you. Until 11, you cannot using ChatGPT, right? So I just don't know how to draw that line. And I also don't want the government to draw that line, because the question here is, similarly, like say acetaminophen, right? The painkiller. We probably don't know why that could reduce the pain, but it works. So you can A/B test to prove it's functional. But you don't want people to come in and say, I want to be able to explain how this works. Otherwise, I cannot approve. I think there's always a balance or a compromise need to draw between convenience and regulations, right? So we want to be safe, but we want to be convenient. And how to draw the line, I think that's require a group wisdom with all the experts here, and also with the help from our leaders, and then together. But eventually, I would say that we need to find a compromise. So either way is probably hard, but the things keep me nice that if we decide not to change, we still live and breathe and educate our generation like 20 years ago. I think if some country or some people choose to do things differently, then eventually in 20 years, our advantage will become our disadvantage.
Yeah.
I, I think it's a really great point about should we ask the kids to not use these tools until a certain age or not, or allow them to use it. I remember back when I was still running the startup, when we were interviewing our engineering candidates, our approach wasn't to test them coding. Well, we were testing them coding questions, but we were allowing them to use whatever they can use online as long as they can solve this coding problem. Because when you're at work, you have access to all the tools you have available. So we cared more about the problem solving ability and are you able to find the right tool to help you solve problems, which I think is kind of relevant to what you're talking about. But now that there are ChatGPTs that can write code for you, I'm not sure if that's a good idea anymore.
And it sounds like it's the destination or goals are all the problems are the same. It's just how we get there are different, and then how we decide, or different generation or different background of people or professions, then we'll decide different solutions to get to that final problems. But it's the same thing. Yeah, and actually, Zhenping, echoing what you said, I think I'm kind of on the cusp or between the really excited, the technology enthusiast, but then also the kind of the pessimist, especially I think none of us actually talked about it, the potential impact to climate, to the planet, like the materials that we are using in building chips, and then the heat that we're generating from these data centers. So yeah, there's a lot of risk and concerns, but it sounds like it's all to take, best for us all come together and then have that dialogue to determine, okay, what's the best path forward? Okay. It's kind of heavy topic, so we're going to shift a little bit, probably more relevant to some of the attendees here. So AI and DS, and you've been in the industry for many, many years and have done a lot and seen a lot of talents. What would you say and advice that you would give for people who want to pursue or wishing to pursue a career in AI, especially for those that who are either just starting or just enter this field?
All right, I'll take it on. I mean, like I said, I mean, I possess a somewhat different background than you guys because I am an economist. I did get my PhD in economics, and when I was in grad school, I had to code too. I had to use MATLAB. I no longer code.
MATLAB. Okay.
I no longer code, but I have long recognized the importance of data. Right. So economists, as you know, we heavily use econometrics model to deal with applied research. Back then, that was when the big data idea emerged. I didn't want to say years because that'll reveal my age. But when I was dealing with the data, I mean, everybody was so hyped about big data. And I look at my field, the econometrics research, for example, has existed for decades, right? So when we didn't have the quality of data, we had to resort to the explanation of biases. We have to get a very good handle on the biases before we can make meaningful predictions and forecasts. And then fast forward to 2000, I think 14 or 15, I recognized and acknowledged the importance of data. So within my team, the marketing team at KDM Mobile Software, I started building a data team. So the data team focuses on the data analytics issue, right? So when I was hiring, I focused on trying to find talents with an aptitude in data, numbers. I was looking for people with numerical sense, right? If you recognize and acknowledge the importance of data, and then we could talk about something else, right? If you don't understand what data means, then this is probably not for you. And I would argue that in the business world, it doesn't matter what position you are, what function you are, you're probably going to find it very difficult to steer away from data, right? So yes, I understand that I'm supposed to be giving you career advice on pursuing a field in data science. And I think all of you, knowing this is where your passion is, you have the aptitude, you have the numerical sense, in data. But I would argue, in order for us to build a more effective linkage between the data science, the field of data science, and business applications, you need to be the translator. You need to be the one that could effectively communicate whatever concepts or insight that that you could get and obtain from the data that you're dealing with, to let the leadership team know, to let the managers know, this is important. Let data drive your decision. So we talked about data-driven approach. Actually, I actually like the phrase better, data-validated approach. I like that phrase better than data-driven, because we're providing evidence and foundation for decision-making process. And that's how we drive progress.
Or data informed. I used to tell my team data informed versus data driven, because you
Right.
want to gather enough information so then you can make informed decisions.
Right. So my career advice would be to really cultivate yourself with the sense of knowing communication is important. How do you communicate with people who are in the capacity of making decisions that your insight is actually valuable? Too many of us have stuck our head in the data, mining tasks, trying to identify trends and patterns without understanding. You know what? In order for us to get to the promised land, you gotta really communicate your insight more effectively.
The storytelling.
Correct.
Yeah. We'll do sequence. Yes.
We'll do this way.
Or rock, paper, scissors.
Okay, so I echo very much about data, understanding data, storytelling, super important. So since you covered the storytellers aspect, I'll cover more of if you want to get into AI, on the more engineering aspect, is that in order to really understand the data and tell an important story, how do you extract information, important information, and filter out the non-important information from the data you're working with? And that really depends on the wealth of AI techniques that you understand. So I view this almost like how you're kind of fighting a boss, a monster, like in 武侠小说. You have a lot of different techniques. Certain techniques work with this boss and certain does not. But if you only have one technique that you know, you're likely not going to be tackling a lot of battles. And so that's why you need to master yourself with many, many techniques in order for you to know which techniques work with what kind of data, what kind of problem. And that way, whenever you have different kind of data you're working with, you'll be able to utilize this wealth of techniques that you know. And so that's why it's important to really get into learning and practicing and doing different projects using different AI techniques.
What are some of the top 3 technical techniques you think people should focus on now? You don't have to answer.
Yeah, I'm a former engineer, so I'm not a very good person to talk about that anymore, but that's a general idea.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
I would talk about ability, mindset, and skill. So the first is the ability to collaborate with another human being. I think we talk about a lot of AI. We talk about AI could jeopardize certain kind of job or careers, but the fundamentally things never change is that almost everything is a teamwork, right? Today is a teamwork, and at the job is a teamwork. So the ability how to collaborate with people in different cultural background, different language, we're just getting more and more important. Because in the past, you would say, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't have to work or do business with my colleague in Japan. Probably not anymore, because language is no longer a problem, right? So now how you collaborate. So the ability to collaborate. And the second thing is the mindset. I think it's the open mindset. I talk about educating our next generation. We talk about a lot of controversial thoughts. I think it is important to be open-minded and to admit that sometimes you are wrong. And it is okay to be wrong. You change, you open-minded, and you embrace new technology. Because we are on the cusp of a lot of new technology, new innovation. No one really knows what's the right answer. So probably the only thing you can do is willing to change your mind, willing to be open-minded. I think that's very important. And the last thing I talk about is the skill. I think the skill itself, I would say the skill of learning new stuff. And in the past, when we hire someone, we say, oh, do you know Java? Do you know this framework? Are you able to write a SQL fluently? A lot of these things will be replaced because people can using tools. But if you can learn new skill very quickly, and using tools to learn tool, or figure out a way to leverage the advance of technology to learn tool, then it will create an advantage for you. So in the future, people being open-minded, able to collaborate, and can learn fast. I think that will be my advice to people who want to work on AI space.
I have one thing that I wanted
Yes.
to add. I think the current education system doesn't support what we're envisioning. Because you see,
Would you like to
everybody-
go back to school?
Right? Yeah, right. Because everybody needs to pick a major, right? And within that major, you don't get to really open your mind, right? You have to eat up all these courses on the menu, which doesn't really cultivate your skills of trying to learn something that you don't know. Like, right? I mean, right? Because, obviously jobs that existed 20 years ago don't exist today. And most likely jobs that will exist 20 years from now, right? You see what I mean? So we don't have an education system that allows all these young professionals to go out there and train themselves to learn things that they don't already know, because we're throwing things upon them. And I think that is the skill that I most value as as a person sitting on the other end of the hiring table. And I think we all are. But I think it's a challenge, especially for young professionals, to demonstrate that skill of being adaptive, being willing to learn new things. How do you do that?
Challenging. Well, with that, thank you so much for the speakers today, and thank you all for being here. That's it for our forum. And if you want to hang out or meet our speakers and myself, we also have at 2:30 have a networking event hosted by DS Data Science Association. So thank you all. Let's give a round of applause to our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.